So thank you so much. I'm here with Jen Miller from the League of Women Voters and Kayla Griffin from All Voting is Local. And then Tiffany Rumbalski is going to help us by dropping things in the chat. We love Tiffany dropping things, and Kelly Dufour is also here helping out. So thanks so much, everyone. Welcome to the May All Volunteer Huddle. And this huddle, as you probably already have figured out, is really all about the Vote No in August campaign, because we can't fix the redistricting process in Ohio without going back to the ballot with a citizen initiative. And that is what we intend to do. And therefore, we really, really, really need to make sure that we all vote no in August and that SJR2 goes down in flames. So that is what this session is all about. If you want to put your questions in the Q&A, we will do our best to answer them. The chat is going to be probably a little bit too busy. So we will just get started here. So this is our agenda for the evening. We want to tell you, for those who were there, if you want to say in the chat, if you joined us at either of the two rallies in Columbus, we would love to hear from you. And, you know, it was amazing. So we want to tell you a little bit about those rallies. We want to tell you what happened at the last minute with the August special election, and tell you what's in the resolution that we are going to be voting on in August and who it will affect. We want to tell you about the campaign that has already been launched against the resolution in August. Kayla Griffin from All Voting is Local is going to tell us about the lawsuit that has already been filed. And then we're going to focus on what we can do now. What I know, you all are serious activists. You care about this. You want to have things that you can do. So we are going to give you things that you can do. So I see lots of I was there's in the chat, which is awesome. And you all made the day special. Here are just a few pictures. Tiffany, or maybe Kelly, can find a link to one of our other photo albums, and we can drop it in the chat, because there are endless photo albums. It was amazing. Look at that line of people stretching out. You know, it was incredible, and it kind of makes it all that much worse that we showed up and we did all of that, and still they did what they were going to do. So, you know, that was a little upsetting, but we are not going to be deterred. I feel like we are gaining momentum, and people are tuning into this, and they know what's going on. And so we're going to give you a background and then some tasks. So now I'm going to turn this over to Jen. Jen. And I just want to say, sorry, if you have a question, rather than raising your hand, pop your question in the chat. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think you all know what's in it, but just a reminder, what's in Senate Joint Resolution 2, which is essentially the same as HJR1, but SJR2 is what they passed. And that's not what it'll be called on the ballot. There should only be one issue, so it should be statewide issue 1 in August. But it calls for a special election on August 8th. It requires any future constitutional amendment to pass by 60%. So this one would have to pass by 50%, but then everyone after would pass by 60%. Petitions that are filed with the Secretary of State starting next year would have to have signatures in all 88 counties rather than 44. And it would get rid of that 10-day cure period, which fair districtors we have needed in the past, like when we have come a little short. Keep in mind that signatures grow stale, right? People move, people pass away. Maybe someone thinks they're registered and they're not, or they accidentally sign in the wrong county. And so it's easy to come a little short. And right now we have a 10-day period to fix that. Next slide, please. What are the kinds of things that'll affect? They certainly during all these hearings, really wanted to link it to choice and the choice amendment. And if that's something you care about, that's something you should know. But the general public, we really want to talk to them about a lot of the other things. Bonds. I know it doesn't make sense that we would have bonds be covered, but we have an amendment in the Constitution from 1851 that sets the debt limit at $750,000. That's not a lot of money. And so all of those bonds, roads, bridges, sewers, park districts, transit, school buildings, those would now have to pass by at least 60%. Democracy policies, redistricting. I know we all dream of, once we tackle redistricting, to tackle dark money, social issues, minimum wage, healthcare, reproductive rights, all these different things. But the point is that I think we're going to want to make sure that we continue to talk about the wide diversity of issues that are impacted. And this image here is actually about those bond issues. And you can see that under the current rules, Ohioans have approved 12 since 1980. And under the proposed rules, we would only approve 8. But then if you add to it just that we have a more extreme legislature in general, we think that there's concerns about some others as well. Let's go to the next slide. Of course, we know that there are challenges with August specials, and that's why we're going to go ahead and have Kayla talk about that legal action. And I'm really glad she's here to do that. But let's keep in mind that this is low turnout. We saw the low turnout before. We could definitely see polling location changes. We could see more polling locations this August than last, just because a lot of elections officials didn't think that they would even have to start talking to polling locations about August, because they thought it was because of 458 passing. Challenges recruiting poll workers. We've gotten some calls asking if people should be poll workers. Yes, we need great poll workers. Poll workers are the backbone of democracy, and we want to make sure voters have a good experience at the polls. $20 million, which we expect to be put in a budget bill. Burnout and frustration among boards of elections. Last August and this August election are also very, very different. This August election, as they are running early vote, they could be certifying the petitions for choice or minimum wage or marijuana or something else. And so they have that going on at the same time. And then on August 9th is when their petitions for candidates and local issues are due. That's the deadline for that. So, you know, a county like Cuyahoga could have 70 or 80 local issues if you think about tax levies and liquor permits. In addition, you know, all kinds of elected official positions, from, you know, school board to township trustees to on and on and on at the local and county level. And so this is going to be a massive effort for our boards of elections, which leads right into challenges administering the fall election, because they will be wrapping up, you know, doing the canvass and those things at the same time that they're trying to run in August. And then I think we need to be concerned about misinformation and disinformation, as well as intimidation. And we'll be talking about why voter education and election protection are so important. But I'd like to turn it over to, oh wait, no, I think I got one more. The ballot board meets tomorrow at 9:30. Here are the members. So Secretary LaRose is a voting chair for this. It is his staff that write the language that, and this group can debate that and change that language in the hearing, but his staff first start with proposed language. And then there are 4 appointees from one where the House Republicans and the House Democrats, the Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats choose those individuals. And there's a non-voting secretary. Again, they write and approve the language that voters see on the ballot box. They adopt an explanation that's published in newspapers. Sometimes they make a pamphlet. The Secretary of State gets to set the title. We might know that in the hearing tomorrow, but it might be set after the fact. Attorney Don McTighe is testifying on behalf of all of us in opposition. This is something he's done a lot of. He was the one that testified when SB 5 was going to be on the ballot, and they were trying to have some shenanigans going on. The Supreme Court of Ohio has sole jurisdiction. So if we had some real big problems and we decided that we wanted to question that, we would go to the Ohio Supreme Court for that. But this is tomorrow, the 18th, in the Senate South Hearing Room in the Ohio State House. It's nice to have individuals in there. Technically, you're allowed to testify. I would suggest we don't this time, and we leave the time to Don McTighe, who has the experience. But you can also watch on the Ohio channel. And now to Kayla.
Well, I'm just going to jump in for 2 seconds, if that's okay. Just to explain, a lot of people have said, what if they turn, we're saying vote no in August. What if the ballot board turns the language upside down and they make it a yes? Now, we are going to wait until tomorrow to print all our flyers and everything. But just to let you know, this is a constitutional amendment and it's like a resolution. And in order to enact the resolution, technically, it has to be a yes vote. They can't make something a change to the Constitution on a no vote. So
yeah, that's good.
We're pretty sure it really does have to be a no vote, but we're still going to wait until tomorrow to print all our stuff. So we're hoping sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, they've taught us to be paranoid. I think the bigger thing that we should worry about is that the title is something ridiculous, like saving our Constitution from special interest groups or, bad actors, so, and Don McTighe has experience fighting that stuff too. But yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mia.
Anyway, now on to Kayla Griffin. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal challenges that we are seeing. As we all know, anybody who's on this call, you've gotten the email blast, that in December, the General Assembly voted to abolish August special elections. That was literally the crux of House Bill 458. Now, it devolved into the ID bill, but the crux of it was to get rid of August special elections. So they did that in December. On January 6th, Governor DeWine signed it into law. And I just think it's so apropos that he signed it into law on January 6th. You can read into that how you want to. But the revised code now only permits that local August elections be held for localities that are under fiscal emergency. And I know the question is probably like, okay, well, what is a fiscal emergency and how are we now having a statewide election if the law says that it could only be a locality under the under fiscal emergency? Well, that is essentially the crux of the complaint. The complaint is asserting that there is no law, there's nothing in the statute in the Ohio Revised Code that says that we can have an August election for a statewide election. Next slide. So the issue really is like, what is the locality and who can have this August election? The definition for a political subdivision or a taxing authority, or it says the bill says a political subdivision or taxing authority may hold a special election on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in August for an office question or issue if the political subdivision is under fiscal emergency. Well, a political subdivision is anything in our state except for our state. So it's a municipality, it's a county, it's a township, but it is not the state. And so what we see in the complaint is that the plaintiffs are arguing that there is nothing in our Ohio Revised Code that would allow you to have this. What we know and what we saw with the political maneuvering last week is that Senate Bill 92 was not going to get passed. There were people who said that they were not going to pass a bill to hold an election when they just got rid of elections. And what we saw on Tuesday was in the Rules Committee, Senator Ray made an amendment to her, to the Senate Joint Resolution. She made an amendment to remove the language for August. It would remove that language and replace it with a 90-day clause. what Minority Leader Russo said in the Rules Committee was that she feared that if they passed that bill on Tuesday, they would just turn around on Wednesday and reinsert that August clause without having an actual statute that says that we are reinstating the August election because we just got rid of it through the signature of the governor on January 6th. We saw that exact thing happen on Wednesday. She was absolutely correct in her fear. She knew that after they passed that amendment on Tuesday out of the Rules Committee and brought it to the floor, that the floor would just revert and go right back to August, as opposed to keeping it a 90-day and allowing for the election to be on during the general election. This is the problem. We don't have any statute or provision saying that we can have an August election, and the complaint says such. Now, the Secretary of State's office has replied through AG Yost. And so if you read the answer, all the answer is saying is that we don't believe that these facts are true. The whole answer is essentially the Secretary of State's office saying that we just don't think that's right. We just do not think that that is true. And what we are going to see in the courts is how this plays out. I think it's a really interesting case because, as we stated, they just got rid of the very provision that they are trying to utilize, and they have not passed a statute in order to bring it back or revive it. And so the complaint is saying that you can't do this. And what we've heard through the grapevine is that there is some case law that sets precedent that says that you cannot bring a joint resolution and have an election without a statute being passed separately as well. And so that's what we're seeing with the legal challenges. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen as a lawyer, and just kind of see what the courts and how the courts are going to side, and if they're really going to hold up precedent or if they're going to revert to something different. Next slide. So the legal challenge timeline: one person, one vote filed the complaint on May 12th. LaRose filed his answer on May 15th. Amicus and realtor briefs are due on May 18th. So that's just in a couple days. And then LaRose will file his response on May 22nd. The courts will decide on paper. There will not be an oral argument. So we're going to read what they have, and there's no date for when they will come out with this, but hopefully we are keeping fingers crossed that we will see something pretty immediately, because in the complaint, it is they're asking for an injunction. So they are asking for this process to be stopped. That would halt the actual election. And so the courts will have to decide whether or not there will be an injunction or whether or not the case will go forward.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to answer, I'm going to just give a pause here for people who want to ask Kayla or Jen questions. And meanwhile, I'm going to just answer this question that just popped into the chat here from Sarah Gideonsi. She says, do I understand that the constitutional amendment to require 60% of the electorate to pass any constitutional amendments doesn't take place until 2024? If so, what is the hurry? I thought the whole reason for the August election was to make it difficult to pass an amendment making abortion illegal. Please explain. So there's two parts to the change. There's a change in how people are required to collect signatures and changing it to 88 counties instead of 44 and getting rid of the cure period. And then there's the change that has to do with moving from 50% to 60%. So they can't retroactively say you should have collected these signatures in these counties. So that part would not take place until 2024. But the part that has to do with raising the pass rate from 50 to 60%, that would be enacted immediately. So it would impact the abortion initiative in November. It would raise it from 50 to 60%. And, many issues in Ohio float somewhere between 50 and 60%. 50% plus one is majority rule. 60%, 40% getting to veto is minority rule. So what we're trying to do is promote one person, one vote, protect majority rule. And yes, it would affect the abortion initiative with the 60%, not with the counties, but with the 60%.
And the reason why that we're pointing that out here at Fair Districts is because if we're going to start collecting signatures for a petition, to change the Constitution and how we do redistricting, and this passes, both portions apply to us, the 60% passage rate, but it's going to be very hard to get on the ballot to begin with when we have to get 5% of all voters from the last governor's race in all 88 counties and have no ability to shore up shortages. It could even be just one county that's short one vote. And this cure period would mean that we would just be not able to bring this to the people.
So I saw a question in the chat real quick. It says, it said, what happens if this loses? I'm sure that whichever party loses, they will appeal, but it's important to know that this court is at the Supreme Court of Ohio. And so
there's no appeal.
There's you could appeal it to the Supreme Court of the United States, but I doubt if they would take it. And we need them to take it before August, and they won't be in session probably by the time that this is over. And so it's at the Supreme Court of the state, and the highest court to appeal from the highest court in your state is the Supreme Court of the United States, and they're about to go out and finish their term. So I doubt if whatever they say will be the.
Kayla, there's another question here in the Q&A that says, can the Supreme Court delay their decision so that the injunction cannot stop the August election? In other words, a passive approval of the Republican position. That's an interesting question.
I actually don't know.
So no, there is there's requirements for being expedited because this is elections related. So I'm not sure that they can, but I also don't think they would. But it's a very interesting question. Thank you for that.
Yep. And then Rachel Lubbers, and we're going to kind of go through some of these questions here because we've zoomed right along. We have plenty of time. There are other states that have a 50%. There are other states that have a higher percentage. But what we're saying is Ohioans have had this right, not only since 1912, but actually earlier in terms of, a majority rule being what is required to change the Constitution. And it's, we want to focus on, we need this right. Our legislature is not representing us. We have a proud tradition of direct democracy and being able to take things to the ballot and having a majority rule. And so it's not we don't want this to be a race to the bottom. In some states, they do other things worse than us. They don't have early vote, or they don't have no excuse absentee ballots. But, we want to preserve our rights that we have in Ohio rather than saying, well, other states do it in a different way. So that's kind of how we're approaching that. Jen or Kayla, do you want to answer some of these other things, or even just, we've answered some of the questions, it just typed answers. And if folks want to read through those, there's some questions in there.
Yeah, I think we will definitely do we can talk some more. I'm wondering if we should just go back through, you just keep going. Yeah. I will just let everyone know that the league will be filing an amicus brief tomorrow. And so a friend of the court brief where we talk about the concerns we have, both in terms of democracy, that such a small turnout is entirely undemocratic for something so important, and also just the challenges for voters and elections officials. So some of the things you can do, there is a toolkit.
All right, you're going to do this one. Very good. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Mia, if you would like to.
No. After you.
So there is a launch toolkit that has basic guidance and hashtags and draft social media. There is a press release. You can go ahead and look and use any of those things. You can sign up as an individual or as an organization for Vote No in August. And just know that all of it, OVRC, Common Cause, League of Women Voters, All Voting is Local. We are also going to be creating our own materials and doing our own events and working together. The one thing I just want to say is we did launch our campaign. Like a lot of you were there, and I'm so glad you were there, where as soon as they voted it out on the House floor, we technically launched our campaign. But let's be clear, that is a launch in the media, meaning we are announcing that we have a website. We are announcing that there's going to be a broad opposition to it, and we're going to be working together. But a lot of the details are still very much in the works. Note that there's a lot of organizations that signed on to the coalition letter that might not actually sign on to Vote No in August, simply because they don't do kind of GOTV electoral work. And so just stay tuned. You will continue to get more and more information from all of us about how you can join. But in the meantime, there's some participation you can do there online.
Yep. All right. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about some things that you can do to be active. And again, this all just happened last Wednesday, so it's been a week. So we are not 100% ready to go, but we are getting ready to go, and we want you guys to be the first to know about it. So we are printing these flyers. We're waiting until tomorrow, as I said, until we have the, we know what happens at the ballot board. But we do already have a form that Tiffany is going to drop in the chat, where you can order some of these flyers. This is a double-sided flyer, and it is a Vote No on August 8th flyer, which also has information about, the new ID laws and registration dates and all that kind of thing. So if you want 10 of them, great. If you want 500 of them, or 200 of them, that's also possible. These need to be gotten out to voters. So if you fill out that request form, we will be sending stuff out to you in a week or so, probably. Another thing that we're working on, or our partners at Ohio Voice and others are working on, is a pledge card. And those of you who have done, door-to-door canvassing probably are familiar with a pledge card, and it'll have a perforation. And so there'll be the part on the right in dark blue is the information that you can perforate and tear the card, and the people will be able to keep that portion, which has all the information that they need to be able to tell their friends and explain about it, and the link and the QR code and everything. And then on the left is the information that we would basically gather so that we can get back in touch with that person and remind them to go and vote. And so if you order these cards, please do not order these cards unless you plan to actually do door-to-door canvassing or be out in crowds and actually collect the information, these cards to be filled out completely so that we have a way to get back in touch with folks. This is a draft, FYI. This is not necessarily the final version. But if you have a local group that does canvassing or is going to be out collecting signatures at events in the next month, or you're going to be at, a July 4th festival registering voters or whatever, and you want some of these cards, you can request them. It's the same request form for both the flyers and the pledge cards. So when we send these slides out, you'll have the link here. We definitely want you to write letters to the editor and op-eds. We have an LTE tool that we're going to be updating with the latest information. And we recently did a letter to the editor training, and we have a video of that So we encourage people to write and let your neighbors know, what's happening with this special election and why it's important to vote no, and how, even just the technicalities. When is the registration deadline? When can they request an absentee ballot? We also really want people to help us share accurate voting information, because this has, this is coming on top of 458 and all the changes that happened with 458. We now have required photo ID. There are changes in the deadlines for requesting absentee ballots and turning in absentee ballots and curing your provisional ballot. There's all kinds of changes that have happened. And so we're still trying to educate people about that. And all of a sudden we have this special election. So there's a lot of links here. You're going to get all of these, so don't worry too much about it. But let me just talk you through this. Election calendar. July 10th is the registration deadline. July 11th is when early vote begins. So you can actually request your absentee ballots now. You can request them today. There's a link to the correct absentee ballot request form where you have to check special election and put August 8th. If you mail that in now, you can track that. That's very important to track your ballot. And then on July 11th, they will send out that absentee ballot. And that's when early vote begins. And then the election itself is on August 8th. So we have new absentee ballot request forms. There are new voter registration forms. There's new requirements for voter ID. And I hope everybody here knows that if you don't have an ID, you can get a free state ID at the BMV. Vote Riders is this excellent organization that is working in our state now. Bashida Johnson is the Ohio lead for Vote Riders, and they are an organization which exists just to help people get their ID, and they will help you not just with the ID itself, but with the underlying documents, and they will cover costs. And they have these beautiful little cards. I have a couple sitting with me here that have all the information about required ID and the help that they give. And so if you want Vote Rider cards to hand out at events, you can request them. You can request them through us. Or if you are an organization, you can request them directly from Vote Riders. We have a whole committee that's devoted to educating people about the new voter information, and that's our OVRC, Ohio Voter Rights Coalition 458 Education Committee. And the link there is to the registration, where we have a meeting at 11 a.m. every other Thursday, and there's one tomorrow. And that committee is doing presentations in the community with the updated information, and it will include information about the August special election. There's a training on June 23rd about how to get trained in order to be part of the Speakers Bureau. You can sign up to be a volunteer. You can help us during the spring and summer tabling at events. We're very active. We also, Vote Riders and OVRC, we're doing letter writing parties where we're writing to voters who don't have ID and who voted with alternative methods in the previous elections, where we write to them to tell them how they can get ID. And we're going to be updating that information with info about the August 8th election. There's actually there's a letter writing party on May 23rd that's open to anyone. It's virtual. We can find that link and make sure to send that out to you. So I know this is a ton of information, but just to say, the biggest challenge we're going to have is motivating people, educating people, and motivating people. Think about it. If this August special elections usually have, 8 or 10% of people turn out to vote, we need all the people that are with us who really care about, preserving our access to the ballot to get out and vote. And they have to know about the election. So we have to tell them. So that is about it. And then I'm
going to jump in and take some questions that we've had. So I think this is really great. There have been questions about like, how are we going to reach rural folks? Good news is that we have a communications team, including several of us on this call, that are working on media markets, both large and small, TV, radio, and print. So that's a very positive one. Someone asked about getting the unions involved. They are part of this coalition, and there will probably be moments where we have events in the field that's democracy groups like ours and unions together having town halls or having events about this. There's a question about the Ohio Chamber of Commerce and NFIB supporting issue 1. You know, William Harper, we don't know if they're going to throw money in or not. I would say the more money that gets thrown in support, the harder our work is. But beyond that, if it's just sheer the groups that are for versus the groups that are against, I think the general public will see that there's far more groups against this issue. The Eliza has a question about, she doesn't understand one person, one vote. What we're saying, Eliza, is that not every vote is equal. So for example, if we were in a baseball team, and usually a baseball team, whoever has the most number of runs wins. But in this situation, the baseball team that has 4 runs could beat the baseball team that has 6. And that way, we're not talking about votes being equal. And that's what one person, one vote actually means legally, is that each vote, regardless as to how you cast for yay or nay, should be valued equally. But I understand it's a weird argument. It's one of those things that I will just say that has been very successful in other states that have beat this back. So there are other conservative states where making ballot initiatives harder have been very successful in that. And there also have been, we've done a lot of polling and we have a lot of communications experts. So I understand it seems like an unusual argument, but it has been very, very effective. In terms of, there's been a lot of questions about contacting those folks who've signed the petition for choice, or if you're collecting those petitions. And I'm just going to let you know that those campaigns, all of those organizations that are working on that are thinking about this exact question. And it's better to check in with who you're volunteering for, because they, I think, have even flyers that say no in August, yes in November. There's a lot of things there. So I would check in with them. There was a question about, are we doing with this, the Democrats? No, actually, this one person, one vote coalition, which, by the way, even if we wanted to change that name, it's dozens, if not hundreds of organizations under that banner. So we don't have the power by ourselves. But the one person, one vote coalition is not associated with a party. And yeah, I'm sure there will be many no to minority rule. Certainly we will do that. So I just wanted to mention, and I'm going to let others kind of jump in on the question part, but I wanted to mention that election protection is really important. A lot of you have been election protection volunteers in the past, and we are so unbelievably grateful for that. We have one of the strongest election protection coalitions in the country, and I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of all my friends on this call that are part of that. But the bottom line is we usually are taking it a little bit easier on odd election years, but we are very concerned that because of the tension that could be around this and the fall election, that we could need election protection. So we are going to be asking you to sign up. We have a happy hour in Cincinnati. Please come to that. That sounds like so much fun. We will need our social workers and clergy and others who are trained in de-escalation in case things get tense. Our hardworking Tiffany is one of our misinformation and disinformation experts. It would not be surprising to see disinformation go out there where they put the wrong date or things like that. So election protection is super critical this year. And we are talking to our national folks who help us run that about how they can support us in August and November. And we're talking to you, our local folks, again, about how we can do this together. And one of the things you can do is just make sure that when you're following all of us on social media and you see an election protection, some sharp looking post that we have with all the lines, get that out there. And some of you, maybe you're a poll worker that day, you could help us by getting the signs out all over the place. Trevor is magical in getting people signs when they need them. And so please keep that in mind. I think we have another slide. And it's about our regional leads. These are our regional leads. So if you're in this general vicinity of Akron, Athens, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Toledo, or Youngstown, you have regional leads that can help you do election protection work. But if you don't know who it is, you can just let us know. Next slide. Also, we already talked about this, but we need poll workers. There was actually a question someone said in the chat, what happens if they don't have enough poll workers? Let's not even have that be a choice. Keep in mind that poll workers are the backbone of democracy. We want all of you to be poll workers if you can. If you can't do a whole day, then do an EP, an election protection shift. But if you can, we need you. We're going to want youth at the booth. Because when there aren't enough poll workers, what's it do? It creates lines. It creates frustrated voters. Then people leave and we have even lower turnout. It's so important. And I don't remember what's next. I think it might be you, Mia.
Yeah, just we always like to put a few links in at the end of our slides, and we will send those out to you. So we have zoomed through all of this, and it was a ton of information, and there's really a lot of great questions in the chat. And I also see some questions in the there's questions in the chat and also questions in the Q&A. Now, Professor Gunther is pointing out that people will be expecting to get their absentee ballot applications and they won't get them. Unfortunately, that is very, very true. Unfortunately, the law changed and the Secretary of State is no longer allowed to send out absentee ballot applications without there being a specific funding allocation from the General Assembly. So, for all we know, we will never get those again. Hopefully we will, but that is something that we, meaning the Ohio Voter Rights Coalition, is sending a letter to the General Assembly right now saying, you passed this special election, you need to fund it, you need to tell people about it. But I think that is a really good point, and I hope that the campaign and the organizations that are working on the campaign will put some effort into spreading the word to let people know that they need to apply for their absentee ballots.
I also would say, if you've done voter education or get out the vote campaigns before, this one might be a little bit different in that sometimes what campaigns are trying to do or get out the vote groups are trying to do is think about those folks who tend to not show up and get them engaged. Actually, this time, we might be starting with regular super voters who just don't have this on their radar or are not familiar with the issue. So we will be we're going to be working it in many different directions. There was a question about how you could donate. If you donate to Fair Districts, that supports the Fair Districts work that we do in terms of organizing all of you. The time that it takes when we're making flyers, we're answering your questions. Other questions we have, Mia?
I'm seeing some in the chat as well. Let me see.
Oh, we have a good one from Sue about that many of the supporters may be targeting churches.
Yeah.
Good news is that we have a whole bunch of faith leaders on our side as well. And so, and we will continue to be working with them on all the messaging.
Yeah. Stephen Shear asks, is there a canvassing operation in place or being organized? A lot of different organizations are going to join together to work on this. Some of those organizations will be ones that do door-to-door canvassing. Some of them will not. But honestly, I do think that is important. And I think even just like dropping lit at people's houses would be really important, particularly in areas where you think you're likely to get a lot of, supporters who would be, wanting to say no in August. And so we'll try to get you information. I also had a question the other day. A friend said, I have a friend who lives in Bavaria and he wants to do calls for, vote no in August. So there may be, after July 11th, we may have phone banks to try to turn people out to go ahead and go vote early. So I would just be watching carefully, emails from us that will always have ways that you can engage.
Yes, and so we have a few other comments here. The rural vote is very important. Absolutely. That's part of the reason why we want to make sure we talk about a broad range of issues that this impacts. We know one side is going to try to make it about one issue when they're talking to at least more moderate or conservative voters. And so we want to talk about a lot of different issues and how even just the statewide bond issues alone have improved the lives of everyday Ohioans. Myra Molnar is asking about a television campaign. Yes, there will be television ads on our side. But let's keep in mind that we have so many people. This will be a grassroots machine, talking voter to voter, neighbor to neighbor. Yes, go ahead.
Patrice Aylward is asking about the process for applying for an absentee ballot. So LaRose won't mail one out to everybody, but you can still get them in a couple of ways. Well, first of all, you could actually go to your BOE and pick up a physical copy of one and fill it out and give it to them there. You can go online, and actually in our slide presentation, we have a link to the PDF of the correct new absentee ballot application. So you can, if you have a printer, you can print that out. If you don't have a printer, you can call your Board of Elections, and you can, it's a ridiculous thing that we don't have a better way to do this, but you would call them, and that what they do is they mail you your application that you then fill out and you mail back to them. And then they will later mail you an actual ballot. So they have to actually mail you the application for the ballot and then later mail you the ballot. So we have the link. You're going to get the link later. You can also, call your Board of Elections or pop into your Board of Elections and pick up a form. Pick up a bunch of them and give them to your neighbors, because your neighbors will also want them.
So John Shelley says every living governor of Ohio publicly opposed SJR2. You can better believe that the folks that are going to be designing the TV ads and the radio ads and all that will be talking about it. Keep in mind that we have messaging research that we've done. There's more messaging research and polling that's being done as we speak that will help us better educate voters, whether it's through the paid campaign, whether it's through our earned media, like letters to the editor, or public events, or like town halls, or knocking on doors. So stay tuned on that, but you better believe we'll have something in there about that. Janice asked a really great question. Are there any explainers available? So we have the flyer that we shared earlier that you can request, Janice, and there will be more ability to, we'll have more materials as time goes on, and we can even do, events with your groups.
So Janice was actually trying to see, like, what's the other argument? The other argument that the kind of other side is, they're saying protect the Constitution, don't allow the mob or out-of-state interests to come in and change the Constitution, which is hilariously ironic, since the Yes campaign here is actually being funded by an out-of-state billionaire, from Illinois. So it's extremely it's hypocrisy. But yes, that is the argument that they're using. I want to focus here on a question in the chat from Glenda Bernstein. She says, if I'm out of the country, e.g. military, do I still have to request my absentee ballot? Yes, you do. And it's really a scandal. And that's why we were upset by 458. The deadlines are so tight. it makes it extremely difficult for folks who are overseas, active duty military, to get their ballots in time. But you can request your ballot now, and then it will be mailed to you on July 11th. And then it has to get back by 4 days after August 8th. So that's the window in which you have to operate. So definitely request as soon as you can.
Sheena has a great question. Is it permitted to print multiple copies of the absentee ballot request? Not the absentee ballot, but the absentee ballot request form, and distribute that? Absolutely. And in fact, Common Cause and League and ABLE and others, we actually do that. We try to get absentee ballot request forms in the hands of people in many different ways. You know, we will visit nursing homes or other facilities. It's good practice to go ahead and have some if you're doing a voter registration event. If you want more information on that or want to join like-minded people who are doing that, Sheena, we would love to have you.
And that's part of the job of the 458 committee. We have this whole 458 education committee, which, you know, we're the more the merrier. And that's it's kind of like being an election protection ambassador. You're somebody who, your job is just to go out there and raise awareness of all the things that people need to know about elections, you know, to hand out those absentee ballot request forms, to get people's voter registrations updated, et cetera. So, you know, we definitely encourage you to join that committee if you have any interest at all in being part of the team that is trying to spread this information.
And then, of course, like organization, you know, like if you're a local league, you know, NASIC is on this call. If you're part of the BOE teams, all of these different places will be getting that information. John Carolino about billboards. Again, there is a team that's about kind of that paid advertising that will be looking at all the, you know, they'll be doing their research and finding the best way to spend dollars, the most cost-effective way of moving voters through the paid campaign.
There was a question about the ballot board. It will be, you know, we'd love for you to come down. I'll be there, you know, Jen will be there, you know, but if you can't, you can watch it live on the Ohio channel. And if you can't watch it live, you can always go to the Ohio channel and get the archives, and it will be available after the meeting.
Linda is saying, are active duty and former military pressuring, shaming LaRose about making it harder for military to vote? Well, the bottom line is LaRose didn't do it by himself, Linda, but I will tell you that in the past, there have been attempts by members of the military or former military to highlight this issue in the media and otherwise.
And it, you know, hasn't had a lot of impact. Not that it wasn't a good thing to do, and we shouldn't continue to do that. And if you are currently or formerly in the military and would like to write a letter to the editor, that would be a powerful and important thing to do. Yep. So we encourage you to do that.
And all of us here are willing to help you read that letter to the editor, give you tips, as long as you give us a little head time. The one thing I do want to caution us on, I know we are frustrated, and I know we are mad, and I know that us democracy advocates have been just been pressured in so many different ways and trying to stand up for democracy and voters. But let's make sure that when we're talking to the public, that we are not talking about it in terms of scandals or power grabs or those things, because people might feel powerless, or they might feel like if they've worked so hard to make it so hard, then my vote's not going to count anyway. This is one of those where here we are together and we are processing our emotions together, which is completely valuable. But when it comes time to actually knock on doors and text and phone bank and talk to your neighbor or do public events, we need to help people understand that they have power and that they can defeat this issue and protect their power by showing up and voting no.
Well, you guys, I think this is a world's record of questions, 57 answered questions in the Q&A. I don't actually know. I know how to save the chat, but I don't know how to save the Q&A. I'm going to try to figure it out. I think you all are wonderful and I appreciate you jumping on. And, this is going to be a few weeks of lots and lots of activity. So we will send these slides out to you and this recording. And, we will, the ballot board meeting is at 9:30 tomorrow. We had well over 200 participants tonight. I'm just answering these questions as they come up.
Yeah, we had
and-
almost 250, I think, at one point, which means that probably over the span, almost 300
Right.
individuals at some point. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Give us a little grace in that we will turn into a machine here in terms of getting you all the information you need and supporting all the stuff that you want to do to get out the vote. We know that time is of the essence, just like you. There's a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes so that we can have all of these organizations working together. And so that'll make it more powerful and more exciting, but it also takes a little more logistics because it's not just Mia and Kayla and Jen and Catherine and Nazik like hanging out and deciding what we're going to do. We are talking about hundreds of organizations statewide and local, and that's exciting, but give us a week or two and I promise we will see a campaign that's really exciting and fun to be a part of.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. You will get a follow-up tomorrow. Usually I like to send them in the morning, but we're going to wait till after the ballot board. So you should get a follow-up in the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.